Hello there, and welcome to Psych 240 at Rio Salado College. If you've read my bio, you know by now that I've taught at Rio Salado for many years. I've taught both Psych 101 and Psych 240, but I confess that I have a special fondness for this particular class. I love talking and reading and learning more every time about human development, and honestly, I can't get enough of babies. And I also love learning more about the trials and tribulations of middle age. And as one who recently turned 65, frankly, I'm curious about this last stage of Erickson's developmental cycle as we prepare, or as I prepare anyway, for whatever comes next. I think that's the nicest way of putting that. I also find a lot of satisfaction in hearing how much this class helps all of you who are parents, parents of young children, parents of teenagers, as well as those of you that are preparing for a career in social services or in human services of any kind. I have found that one can never learn too much about those whom we are called to either nurture or take care of in some type of service. This class is fairly straightforward insofar as the work is concerned. It consists of reading the modules. All of the material that you need is in those modules, and I do ask that you use them as your primary source, both for your research and your references. I don't mind if, of course, I don't mind if you do additional reading, but I do ask that every short essay contain at least one or two references to the modules. It's the only way that I have of making sure that you are interacting with the material that the college provides for you. I also recommend that you produce or create some kind of study, reading, and writing schedule and stick to it. It's really easy to get behind in this class, and then it's tough to catch up. I've been doing it for enough years that I know that that's a fact, so I can't recommend enough that you keep up with the due dates. As I say in the announcements, you are free to cut back to the 8-week schedule, but my recommendation is that you maintain the 14-week schedule, and if you wish to work ahead, that's fine with me, as long as you finish the class in a minimum of 8 weeks. If you finish it in less than 8 weeks, it just causes all kinds of chaos. So please work ahead if you wish, but stay within the 8-week period. I also recommend that you read all of the announcements before you turn in your first assignment. You'll notice that there is a long list of short announcements in the classroom. It's been suggested to me that I create a longer document with all of those announcements, but throughout the years I've checked in with students and they say that they would find that overwhelming, that to have a small amount of information is easier for them to process. So that's fine. Just make sure that you're familiar with what's in them before you hand in an assignment. I'd like to take a moment to go over those announcements and highlight the things that I consider most important. Listening to me right now, though, doesn't supersede reading the announcements. Please make sure that you do that. But what I'm trying to do is clarify some things that you might find helpful. Sometimes, because we're not all visual learners, an auditory reminder is beneficial. I know it helps me. The first few announcements have to do with classroom civility, plagiarism, and protecting the integrity of your work. It's fairly standard material, but for many of us, working in this new age of technology is new, and it's important that you realize that your work can get compromised if you don't follow some basic rules. So there is information in there about how technology works. One of the ones that I've actually seen happen is if you allow a friend to upload work on your own computer after you're logged in as yourself. It can open you up later to accusations of plagiarism. So the best thing to do is to log in as yourself, use your own forum for your own work only. There's a few announcements that have to deal with formatting. I know that this causes a lot of consternation early on in the class, and I've made every attempt to explain how I'd like for you to submit your papers, but I'd like to go over it right now because it'll save us both a lot of grief. Some things are pretty straightforward. I actually require that you copy and paste each question and that you paste that above your text, please. It's easier for me that way to keep track of what you're talking about. Otherwise, the material merges one short essay into another, and it's hard for me to determine which essay is which. Where it gets sometimes a bit confusing is in the actual formatting. So again, here's what I'd like for you to do. Write your paper in Word or in whatever word processing program you prefer. Proofread your work. This is really important. I do have an app. I apologize. I do have a rubric posted of how I grade your work for grammar, composition, and content. I confess that I don't always stick to that rubric. I tend to be very lenient, understanding that people make mistakes out of stress or because life gets in the way. But I do ask that you at least make every attempt to submit your work in college level English. There is an app out there called Grammarly with an A, and I recommend that you take a look at it. It's free. You can, like most things, you can upgrade it by paying money, but the basic free app is sufficient to catch not only spelling errors, but basic grammatical and punctuation errors, which really take away from the beauty of your work. So it's easy to download, it's easy to use, I recommend it. After you've written and proofread your work, copy and paste your essays into the appropriate form. And then what I ask you to do this, and only after you've copied and pasted your work into the form, is to take your cursor and separate your work by placing the cursor at the beginning of a logical break in the work, such as the question, for sure, and then double spacing the text down twice, and that way you have your essays separated. After that, don't stop with that. After that, go back to, say, short essay number 1, and go to each logical break in the text. Usually that's after a citation, right? So you make a statement, you've obtained that material from one of the modules, you cite the module, you then place your cursor at the beginning of the following sentence, hit enter twice. That will separate the work so that when I go read it, things aren't jumbled and running into each other. I've been told that you can't tell the difference when you do this in your own forum. But believe me, it makes all of the difference in the world to me. So I ask that you please do it. Generally, I will annotate your first essay if you don't format it correctly. And I will repost the directions on how to do it. But after lesson number 2, I do start taking off points if I can't read your work with ease. Another way to explain it is, for example, the first assignment that you have to do has to do with the 6 theories of developmental psychology. Pay attention to that, and there's an announcement about this as well. We're talking about the theories, not components of the theories, such as nature versus nurture. We're talking about the actual 6 theories, and I believe those are discussed in module number 1. I think it's in section 3. Make sure you read all of module number 1, and you will see then the 6 theories. You're asked to take the case of a young lady named Alice who is struggling with maths, and you are asked to take you're asked to take 2 of the 6 theories and apply them to the case. So the way that you would do this is you would write your assignment, say you select psychosocial and cognitive. So you write your assignment analyzing the case using both theories, and then you separate your text. First, psychosocial, you've talked about Freud, you've talked about Erickson, you've talked about what stage Alice might be in and what might be causing these struggles. Don't forget to also discuss possible limitations. A lot of students forget that, and it's a loss of points even at the start. And then hit enter and go into discussing the case from a cognitive perspective or an evolutionary perspective or whatever you select. Okay? Make sure every time that you reference the module and that you cite the module in the text and then that you reference it at the bottom. That brings me to a discussion of APA, the American Psychological Association's system for publication. Most of you will have seen this in high school, hopefully, or you may be familiar with MLA, which is a completely different system. You then need to become familiar with APA, which I've got good news for you. It's simpler. You don't have to footnote. The way that you do APA is you cite your source in the body of the text. There's a specific format for citations, and then at the end of your essay, you write your references. As I say in the announcements, I don't mind if you submit all of your references at the end of the third short essay. That's fine. Just make sure that each essay properly cites the module that you've used for your information, and then whatever additional information you've brought in. I want to remind you that if you take someone's work from a module, you cite the module, not the person's work. Otherwise, you're implying that you went and took the book out of the library. I'm always suspicious when someone cites and references Sigmund Freud's interpretation of dreams. I know perhaps you have, and I can't assume, but I'm going to assume that you didn't take the time to read that entire work. Rather, the citation came from a module. So make sure that you are upfront about that. That's the majority and the most important announcements. Again, please read all of them. And I just want to say once again that I want to stay involved in your learning. One of the reasons we're doing these videos is so that you can see me, you can see I'm real, I'm here. I check into the Real Classroom daily. It's a rare exception when I don't at least check for messages. So make sure that if you have a question that you write me in the message center. I also post a discussion in the threaded discussion section. That's meant for you. I never go in there. That's a place where you can meet your classmates, and if you have a question, ask it in there, and you all can interact in there. If you want a discussion or if you have a question for me, use the message center. I also want to invite you to request personal face-to-face meetings should you wish to discuss something further. And all you need to do is send me a message, and I will send you a Zoom link. I'm going to try and keep the times between 4:30 and 5 o'clock open every weekday but Tuesdays. So if you have a need to speak to me, just send me a message in the message center at least 24 hours before, and I will send you a Zoom link and meet up with you if I am available. I think that's all that I had to say. Reminding you once again to read your announcements, that you use the college modules as your primary source of information. And again, please feel free to message me if you need anything at all. Have a great class. I look forward to reading your work. Bye.